Welcome back to the Deep Dive, where we take the source material you share with us and, well, we extract the most valuable, surprising, and immediately applicable insights.
It's great to be back.
Today, we are dissecting a topic that I think on first glance seems incredibly mundane.
Almost boring, you might say.
Right, the weekend. But this 2-day window, it fundamentally dictates the rhythm and, I think critically, the quality of our modern lives.
It's absolutely true. We are moving far beyond, a simple discussion of time off.
Mm-hmm.
This deep dive is about mastering the sociology of leisure.
The sociology of leisure, I like that.
And also the intricate and often unspoken etiquette of modern social planning. And of course, that highly coveted, yet increasingly elusive concept of work-life equilibrium.
So for the modern learner, navigating your non-work life requires, I guess, just as much sophistication as navigating the boardroom.
I would argue maybe even more.
Okay, let's unpack this then. Our goal isn't just basic survival communication.
No, not at all.
We are targeting the linguistic upgrades and the sophisticated social nuances that define a truly well-adjusted, successful life in the 21st century.
Right. Think of this as the advanced course in time management and really social grace.
Precisely. If you are aiming to level up your social intelligence and maybe more importantly, protect your mental resources, the core questions we're looking at are so immediate and practical.
They really are. Like, how do you politely, effectively, and without causing any offense, decline an invitation when what you truly need is just solitude?
That's a huge one. How do you articulate that need for recovery, for recharging, in a way that signals self-awareness and control, not, that you're antisocial?
Exactly. And the big one, the elephant in the room, is how this hyper-connected digital age has fundamentally, and I think perhaps permanently, blurred those essential boundary lines.
The lines between our professional life and our personal time.
They're almost gone.
So we're aiming for mastery here. It's about achieving sophistication, not just in what you do, but in how you talk about what you do.
And crucially, what you choose not to do.
And there's only one logical starting point for this exploration. It has to be that universally recognized social ritual that signals the end of the work week.
What we lovingly call the Friday Inquisition.
Yeah, the Friday Inquisition is that ritualistic conversation starter.
It is. It's the inevitable question that permeates, nearly every office, every digital team chat or hallway interaction around, say, 4 p.m. on a Friday afternoon.
What are your plans for the weekend?
That's the one.
It seems so innocuous, doesn't it? Just a quick exchange of facts. But if you analyze it through a sociological lens, the function of that question is so much deeper than just, information gathering.
What's fascinating here, and I really want to slow down on this point, is that this question is rarely informational. Its primary purpose is what linguists call a phatic function.
Phatic function. Okay, break that down for us.
So phatic communication is any language like greetings, comments about the weather, casual check-ins, that's used primarily for establishing or maintaining or sometimes even closing social relationships.
So it's not for imparting any substantive or critical data?
Not at all.
Right.
The person asking doesn't actually need your minute-by-minute itinerary for Saturday.
Right. They are engaging in a social mechanism, one that's designed to build momentary rapport and initiate small talk in a really low-stakes, non-threatening, casual way.
Exactly. The act of asking, that mutual recognition that the week is ending and the casual connection itself, that's often far more important than the literal answer you provide.
And if you understand that, then you understand what the social requirement for the answer is. It has to be brief, friendly, and, I guess, reciprocal.
Precisely. And that, for our learner, is where the social trap lies.
Okay.
Because answering it incorrectly can disrupt that delicate rapport the question was intended to build in the first place. You face two major risks.
Let's hear them.
The risk of being overly verbose, launching into this detailed, 5-minute monologue that nobody asked for. That signals low social awareness.
We've all been on the receiving end of that.
Oh, yes. Or the other risk, being too dismissive. A really terse, unenthusiastic answer that risks just fracturing that newly established connection.
So the goal, then, is to deliver the Goldilocks answer.
The one that is just right.
Yes.
If you have genuinely no concrete plans, the novice might just shrug and say, nothing.
Which can sound a bit sad or closed off.
It can. The advanced speaker, however, recognizes that this lack of plans needs to be reframed.
Yeah.
It must be articulated as a deliberate, thoughtful, and sophisticated choice. One that signals agency over your time and a commitment to self-maintenance.
That is the upgrade we're looking for, framing nothing as a decision, not as a default state.
Yes. So instead of that flat nothing, you might hear an experienced colleague use terms like,
I'm planning a very low-key weekend.
that's a classic. Or, I'm looking forward to some much-needed downtime.
Let's pull those two apart, because the distinction there is actually quite useful for the learner.
It is. Low-key refers primarily to external activity. It means, you're avoiding large crowds, complex logistics, high-energy social engagements. It sets an expectation of minimal fuss.
Whereas downtime, that's particularly effective because it implies a sort of mechanical or internal necessity.
How so?
It's like a sophisticated piece of machinery, right? Your system, your mind, your body, your nervous system, it requires a scheduled period of necessary non-activity.
Yeah.
For maintenance, for cooling, for resource replenishment.
I love that framing. It immediately turns the lack of plans into a purposeful, almost professional decision to recharge. It's strategic.
And that elevates the entire response. But I know your favorite piece of sophisticated vocabulary in this context is the verb.
Decompress.
Yeah.
It's my absolute favorite. This term is just incredibly rich, and it's widely understood in professional environments.
Why do you think it's so powerful?
Because it inherently implies that significant pressure has been built up throughout the week. It paints this picture of a metaphorical deep-sea dive, if you will.
And the weekend is the specific necessary mechanism for a slow, controlled, and therapeutic release of that pressure.
Exactly. It's a beautifully concise way to communicate your state. When you say, I've had a hectic week, so I'm going to decompress and catch up on some reading, you're signaling a high level of self-awareness about your mental state.
You're managing your resources proactively, not just letting the weekend happen to you.
And that wording, it elevates any solitary pursuit. Reading, gardening, even just watching television, from mere time-killing activity to a deliberate therapeutic act.
An act of restoring physiological and psychological balance.
Right. We know that stress increases cortisol levels, which keeps us on edge. Decompression is the recognized social term for the practice of actively reducing those internal stressors.
Now, speaking of deliberate solitude, we have to highlight the cultural currency of the acronym JOMO.
JOMO.
Yeah.
The joy of missing out.
This concept is absolutely crucial for navigating modern social pressures, which are so often amplified by social media's insistence that, everyone else is having more fun than you are.
It's the perfect counter tool to the relentless engine of FOMO, the fear of missing out.
How does it work as a counter tool?
Well, FOMO is all about external validation and comparison. It's predicated on that. JONO, conversely, is an assertion of internal prioritization. It's a high EQ way of saying, I am happily choosing to prioritize my own internal resources by staying home and recharging my social battery.
And I am finding genuine pleasure in that choice.
Yes. It reframes solitude. It's not a failure to get an invitation or a sign of being socially inert.
It's a deliberate strength. It's the ultimate etiquette of declining politely while maintaining, even enhancing, your social status.
Because you're signaling that you are indeed busy, not with other people, but with yourself. And that self-care is a non-negotiable engagement that takes priority.
If you can deploy JOMO with confidence, you've successfully articulated that need for recovery and mastered the polite social refusal. It's a subtle dance.
It really is.
Absolutely. Okay, let's perform the great transition. Let's fast forward 72 hours. The tense shifts dramatically to the retrospective on Monday morning.
Right. You walk back into the office or log into the chat and secondary ritual begins.
How did your weekend go?
This is a different social test entirely.
How so?
Because now you have to successfully reintegrate into the work environment while demonstrating that you have, in fact, returned refreshed and ready to contribute.
And the goal here is absolutely essential. We need to be crystal clear about this for our listener.
Yes?
You must provide a highlight reel, not a forensic report.
Oh, that's perfectly put. A highlight reel.
Yeah.
Your colleagues do not need, nor do they want, a detailed chronological breakdown of your grocery run, your laundry cycles.
The 3 hours you spent vacuuming, the organizational methodology you applied to your linen closet, that is oversharing, and it just drains conversational energy.
The highlight reel must be concise. It must be curated, and it must be energy neutral. Remember that phatic function.
It's all about connection.
Yes. So your answer has to offer a brief, memorable anecdote that maintains the rapport established on Friday, but without inviting deep, time-consuming follow-up questions about your personal life.
So instead of a play-by-play, you offer a curated summary using elevated affirmative language. For example,
You could say, it was restorative, thank you. We actually caught a matinee of that new satirical comedy.
Let's analyze that response. The word restorative does all the heavy lifting there.
It really does. It efficiently signals that you feel recovered and you're ready for Monday.
And the mention of the specific activity, a satirical comedy, it provides a brief, intellectually interesting, non-controversial talking point.
And it showcases your taste without demanding a detailed explanation. It provides a conversational escape hatch. The other person can say, oh, nice, and move on.
And just like that, that's the linguistics of low-key mastered. You've articulated the need for recovery. You've successfully managed the social expectations of both Friday and Monday.
And you've presented your return as a successful, energized event, which naturally and beautifully guides us into the required vocabulary for discussing the activities themselves.
Okay, let's pivot and address this modern leisure landscape. Going to the cinema, or, the pictures, if you want to use that charmingly nostalgic, slightly vintage term, is a classic pastime.
It is. But, as we've been discussing, we are moving beyond basic adjectives if we want to demonstrate a certain critical capacity.
Right. If you are engaging in conversation at an advanced level, you have to elevate your film description. You need to discuss more than just whether the movie was, good or bad.
Or funny, or scary. Advanced analysis requires incorporating terms that relate to the film's structure and its aesthetic choices.
So this means fluency in discussing specific genres, the cinematography, how it was shot.
The pacing, which is how the story unfolds, and the complexity of its narrative arcs, so the character development.
This is where the language gets really useful for the learner. I mean, think about how you would describe something to make it sound compelling, not just subjective.
Let's take a horror movie. A basic description might be, it was scary, I jumped a lot.
Which tells us basically nothing about the film's artistic merit.
Exactly. But an advanced speaker would describe it as perhaps psychologically gripping.
Or maybe visceral.
Ooh, visceral is a great one. Let's look at those. If you say it was psychologically gripping, you're stating that the tension was built through intellectual suspense and thematic conflict, not just cheap scares.
And the term visceral is superb here. It implies the film didn't just engage your mind.
It provoked a powerful, instinctive, almost gut-level reaction deep within your body. It conveys a physical, intense experience, signaling a high-impact viewing that transcends simple jump scares.
Right. Now let's apply the same principle to a comedy. We move beyond, I laughed a lot.
We describe it in terms of its composition. We're looking for witty dialogue, which suggests an intellectual sharpness.
Or humor that is, say, full of dry humor.
And what does dry humor communicate? It signals an appreciation for sophisticated wordplay, understated delivery, and irony.
It distinguishes it sharply from broad physical comedy or, slapstick.
And this is all about demonstrating critical capacity and an eye for nuance, which is a huge unspoken component of social intelligence.
You are not just consuming culture, you are analyzing and articulating its quality.
Exactly. Now let's turn to the logistical administration of that leisure.
Ah, yes, the practical side. The cinema experience is a cultural ritual with its own specific vocabulary. For instance, we don't just buy tickets anymore. That sounds a bit rushed and transactional.
Instead, we secure seats in advance.
And securing seats is important because it implies strategic planning. You're not just hoping for the best.
Right. You are ensuring you have the perfect vantage point, maybe on the aisle for an easy exit, or in the center balcony for optimal immersion. This act of administration removes the logistical friction from the leisure itself.
And securing our place in this sacred ritual means navigating another mandatory social point, the concession stand.
Ah, the concession stand. It's one of those terms that, while it's standard in Anglophone culture, it can often confuse learners.
Why concession?
Well, because the vendor is operating under a commercial concession. It's a contractual right granted by the venue owner to sell refreshments within that larger location. It's just the established vernacular, and using it correctly demonstrates fluency.
And we have to acknowledge the psychological component of this space. We know intellectually that the prices charged at the concession stand are
exorbitant.
Yes, vastly inflated beyond any reasonable cost. Yet we inevitably succumb to the allure of the buttery popcorn, the oversized soda, the novelty candy.
It's not about the value proposition, is it? It's about the societal permission slip.
Explain that.
Buying the overpriced snacks is an established, almost mandatory pattern of participation. It's part of the full, immersive experience. And acknowledging this universal willingness to overpay for the ritual adds a touch of shared self-deprecating humor to the conversation.
I would almost argue that the excessive price of the popcorn is the first barrier to entry for the immersive cinematic experience.
Once you've paid it, you've committed.
Exactly. But of course, the domestic shift has changed leisure forever.
Without a doubt. The rise of streaming services has normalized the cultural phenomenon of binge watching, and that has fundamentally altered our relationship with narrative.
We've moved away from the week-to-week cadence of broadcast television. Now, you can consume an entire complex season of a compelling drama in just one sitting.
The experience is incredibly immersive. You are drawn completely into that constructed world without the friction of commercial breaks or the need to wait 7 days for continuity.
However, there is a clear cognitive and physical flip side to that intense immersion.
Oh, absolutely. After spending 8, 10, maybe 12 hours glued to a screen, the viewer might find themselves feeling surprisingly lethargic.
Lethargic, that's the perfect word. A feeling of mild inertia, physical sluggishness, or just a general lack of mental energy.
Because the brain has been hyperstimulated by the narrative, but the body has been completely sedentary.
And that feeling of lethargy often pairs perfectly with the unglamorous yet absolutely essential chore block.
The other side of the weekend.
The reality is a significant portion of the weekend is dedicated not to relaxation, but to necessary maintenance.
And this is where we need to elevate the terminology to match the effort required. We are no longer doing chores.
We are engaging in domestic administration.
Exactly. The term sounds weighty because the task itself is weighty. It's the continuous strategic effort required to maintain a functioning environment.
Framing it as administration acknowledges that maintaining a household is akin to running a small, ongoing nonprofit organization. It requires energy, time, and strategic scheduling.
And this administrative block is often the antidote to the notorious Sunday scaries.
That's a crucial connection. The Sunday scaries are that low-grade anxiety that sets in when you realize you haven't managed your maintenance tasks, and Monday is approaching rapidly, demanding your full attention.
So by proactively engaging in domestic administration, you eliminate that source of anxiety.
And we need the right action verbs here. We don't just do housework. We utilize the weekend to tackle the backlog of necessary tasks.
And this includes targeted, focused activities like deep cleaning.
Which is more involved than a quick, tidy, and addresses buildup.
Proactively decluttering, the necessary removal of excess or redundant items.
And of course, running errands, those unavoidable trips to the dry cleaner, the pharmacy, the post office.
And notice the deep connection between the physical task and the psychological result. Decluttering isn't just about tidiness.
No, it's about reducing visual and cognitive load. The less chaotic your physical environment, the less energy your brain has to spend processing that chaos.
This essential maintenance of life directly prevents environmental friction from draining your mental and cognitive resources for the week ahead.
So domestic administration is foundational for achieving that overall equilibrium. Okay, now that we've covered the logistics of recovery and essential maintenance, let's move to the external social pressures.
The etiquette of hospitality.
This is high-stakes social navigation.
It truly is. Hosting is one of the highest expressions of social intelligence. When you invite peers into your private space, your sanctuary, you are taking on the considerable responsibility of curating their entire atmosphere and experience.
It's an act of sustained generosity.
And being the consummate host goes far beyond simply ensuring there is enough food and drink. It requires anticipating needs and managing the social flow.
Absolutely. Hospitality is an art form that begins the moment the guest arrives. The initial interaction has to instantly ease their transition from the stress of the external world into the comfort of your home.
Which means immediately taking their coat and instantly offering a beverage, what we might playfully call a libation.
That gesture of the immediate offering is such a key signal. It says, you are welcome, you are cared for, and your immediate comfort is my absolute priority.
It establishes an atmosphere of effortless ease, even if the effort behind the scenes was, substantial.
And the social orchestration continues throughout the event. The consummate host isn't passive.
No, they are constantly facilitating conversation, gently drawing out quieter guests, and ensuring that no individual feels marginalized or left out of the social flow. They are monitoring the room's energy.
That active attention to detail is what distinguishes simple entertaining from true expert-level hospitality.
It is.
That deep dive into the host's role is critical. But let's flip the script now. If you are the guest, there are equally rigid rules of conduct that demonstrate your social acumen and respect for the host's efforts.
Rule number one, which should be universally accepted but is sometimes lazily ignored, is that punctuality is paramount.
And we need to be specific about this. When the invitation says 7:00 p.m., arriving at 7:00 p.m. or maybe 7:05 p.m. is respectful.
Right. Arriving fashionably late at 7:45 p.m. is, well, it's a myth invented by those who are simply disorganized or who misunderstand their own social importance.
Why is that late arrival so disruptive?
Because the host has likely timed their preparation, the appetizers, the optimal temperature of the food, the mood setting around that arrival time. Arriving 30 minutes late disrespects that coordination.
It can force the host to rush or delay important parts of the evening. It's just disrespectful of their effort.
Correct. Arriving on time demonstrates respect. And the second rule, which is absolutely de rigueur, meaning it's socially required in many Anglophone cultures, is the necessity of never arriving empty-handed.
Yes, the necessity of bringing a token of appreciation. And we should emphasize this is not a requirement of necessity.
No, the host is not depending on your offering. They don't need your bottle of wine or the box of specialty chocolates.
It is a requirement of ritual, of signaling. It is a symbol of gratitude for the invitation and for the considerable effort and investment the host has expended to curate this experience for you.
You're recognizing their investment in you. It creates a reciprocal transaction of social generosity.
And the choice of token matters too. You might bring a bottle of wine, but if you know the host doesn't drink, the advanced guest brings something consumable that fits their tastes.
Like a gourmet coffee, a unique flower arrangement, or a small novelty item they can enjoy later. It shows thoughtful awareness of their preferences.
It moves beyond the generic obligation into genuine, personalized gratitude.
Then finally, we arrive at the ultimate act of social grace, the art of the exit.
Ah, yes. Knowing precisely when to leave, and more importantly, how to signal your departure smoothly without causing an awkward pause or, worst of all, overstaying your welcome.
Overstaying can completely negate all the goodwill you've built up during the previous hours. We've all been that host who's watching the clock tick past midnight, silently wishing the last guest would just take the hint.
So what's the move?
The polite signaling phrase is beautifully and ingeniously crafted. I should probably get going. I don't want to keep you.
Let's analyze that genius phrasing because it cycles right back to our original discussion on phatic communication.
It does. You are performing an altruistic social act. You're framing your departure as an act of thoughtful kindness toward the host.
You're operating under the assumption that they, too, have a schedule to keep or a need for rest or simply want their evening back.
It's a gesture of empathy that ensures a smooth, guilt-free transition out the door. The host cannot argue with it because it is phrased as a selfless concern for their time.
It is the final, perfect punctuation mark of a successful social engagement. It shows you respect not only the time you spent there, but the time the host needs for their own recovery.
And this entire discussion of leisure, administration, and etiquette, it all brings us to the fundamental philosophical struggle underpinning the modern weekend.
We have to address the elephant in the room.
The pervasive, insidious problem of burnout.
This is critical to our entire discussion of equilibrium. In our hyper-connected world, the line between the professional and the personal, it hasn't just blurred.
It has become completely porous. The boundaries are no longer solid walls. They are permeable membranes.
We carry our entire office, our full email inbox, our task lists literally in our pockets via our smartphones.
That digital leash means that we are always potentially on call, always available to respond to the next urgent notification. And this hyper-availability fundamentally compromises the weekend's ability to serve its primary function.
Which is restoration.
Precisely. The consequence is that the weekend is no longer a guaranteed right, a universally respected period of protected time. It has become something that must be actively fought for, guarded, and protected by setting incredibly firm, non-negotiable boundaries.
Boundaries are the gatekeepers of your time and your attention.
They are. And if you fail to set them, the professional sphere, which is relentless by its very nature, will inevitably encroach on your personal space. The expectation of instant response is the enemy of true rest.
So we talk about actionable strategies like unplugging or engaging in a digital detox. These are not fads for the overly precious, are they?
No, they are necessary acts of self-preservation and resource management. Simple strategies like turning off work email notifications on the weekend or leaving the work phone in a different room create immediate, crucial mental separation.
And this ties directly into the necessity of compartmentalization.
Yes. Compartmentalization is the cognitive skill of mentally separating different aspects of your life. If you're answering emails on a Sunday morning, you are fundamentally violating the separation.
You're preventing your cognitive faculties from achieving the deep rest required to process the stress and demands of the previous week.
You are effectively robbing Monday's performance to pay for Sunday's low-grade anxiety.
That brief hit of dopamine you get from clearing an email is immediately replaced by the realization that you haven't actually rested.
And you have set a dangerous precedent for accessibility.
Precisely.
And the cumulative consequence of this boundary violation is the rapid acceleration toward burnout.
And burnout, we should be clear, is not just simple tiredness.
No. It is defined as a state of deep emotional, physical, and mental exhaustion caused by prolonged or excessive occupational stress. If the brain is never allowed to fully reset, it enters a state of persistent low-grade stress.
Which is entirely counterproductive to long-term health and performance. So whether our listener prefers an active weekend hiking, kayaking, seeking an adrenaline rush, or a sedentary one focused purely on self-care.
The objective, regardless of the method, remains utterly consistent.
And that objective is singular and foundational.
Restoration. The weekend must serve as a restorative period designed to replenish the specific cognitive, emotional, and physical resources that were drained during the intense pace of the work week.
The final goal, the reason we put so much effort into the linguistics of leisure and the etiquette of boundaries, is simple yet profound.
We need to successfully recalibrate our equilibrium, that delicate state of balance.
So that we can face the coming week not with dread or depletion, but with renewed vigor.
Vigor. That implies energy, enthusiasm, robust strength, and mental readiness. If you begin Monday already depleted, you have failed the most crucial task of the weekend.
Which was to prepare for the week ahead.
The weekend isn't just a pause, it's a refueling station.
This has been a truly comprehensive journey into the sociology and psychology of rest. Before we wrap up, let's distill this into the 3 essential pillars of knowledge that our deep dive learner should integrate immediately.
Absolutely. Okay, 3 points to synthesize all of this. First, master the fatigue.
Right. Remember that small talk, especially the "what are your plans" question, is primarily designed to build social rapport. It's about connection, not data.
So choose your words carefully, using terms like low-key or downtime to foster that connection while still protecting your privacy and your resources.
Okay, pillar number 2.
Elevate your vocabulary. Move beyond simple, low-effort descriptions. Incorporate sophisticated descriptive terms that show critical thought.
Like restorative, decompress, immersive, hospitality. This signals high social and intellectual nuance.
And third, and maybe most important, respect the boundaries. Understand that in this hyper-connected culture, personal time is no longer granted. It must be actively protected.
Disconnecting from work, that digital detox, that strict compartmentalization, is a crucial cultural requirement to proactively prevent burnout and ensure cognitive recovery.
And here's where it all comes together, building on that contrast between active and sedentary restoration.
We've established that both high-octane activity and quiet stillness are perfectly valid paths to recharging.
The active approach uses physical exhaustion and adrenaline to force the mind into a different state. It's essentially a hard reboot.
While the sedentary approach uses stillness and low cognitive load for a slow, gentle, systemic recovery.
Exactly.
So, as our final provocation for you to consider this week, which side of the restoration equation do you naturally gravitate toward? And maybe more importantly, does your current routine, be it deeply active or wonderfully low-key, truly achieve the necessary state of equilibrium and vigor required for you to face the week ahead?
That's the question to ponder. If you are dragging yourself through Monday, perhaps it's time to enforce those boundaries and adjust the script.
Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into the sociology of your time off and the art of professional restoration.
We hope this discussion has equipped you with the linguistic tools and the sociological understanding to discuss your leisure time with sophistication.
And, more importantly, to enjoy it fully and without guilt.
Until next time, stay curious and keep seeking that necessary vigor.
Welcome back to the deep dive. So, if our last discussion was really focused inward, on the art of setting personal boundaries, avoiding overcommitment.
That intentional rest.
Exactly. Today, we're kind of taking those strategies and moving them out into the public arena. We're stepping out of that personal bubble and into the wider world of sophisticated social logistics, how we interact, how we say no, and how we talk about things afterward.
That's a perfect way to put it. We're moving from self-management into social mastery. I mean, for any high-achieving learner, the real goal is to operate with nuance, with proficiency.
Right.
So our mission today is really to dissect those specific social conventions, the linguistic strategies you need to engage at that really high level, the level where you can navigate these complex currents and still, preserve every important relationship.
Okay, let's unpack this then and see how we can give you that shortcut to social mastery. We've pulled some really useful patterns from the source material, and they seem to coalesce around 3 major pillars.
They do.
These pillars that often determine whether you just sound fluent or if you sound genuinely masterful.
The first one is just fundamental. Understanding dining is a ritual. This is about moving past the simple transaction of buying food.
Right?
And engaging with a structured gastronomic experience, recognizing all the hidden rules and the specific vocabulary that goes with it.
And pillar number 2, this is the one that I think saves the most emotional energy, is the art of declining.
The soft no.
The soft no. It's all about mastering these very specific linguistic techniques to set your boundaries gracefully without causing offense or, professional damage.
And then finally, the third pillar, which kind of validates your participation in all of this, is critiquing with nuance. How do you offer a balanced, informed opinion about an experience, a film, a dinner, whatever, without just resorting to, it was good, it was bad. This is really the definition of analytical maturity.
That's the core mission. And I have to say, this whole topic, it just highlights how easy it is to stumble into a social, or I guess a linguistic minefield.
It really is.
Especially when you have to decline something or give a tricky opinion. We're going to try and give you the blueprints and the vocabulary to navigate that terrain safely.
Our aim is to equip you with the tools to communicate exactly what you mean, politely, effectively, and allow you to prioritize your own needs while still showing respect for others. That, right there, is the hallmark of true social proficiency.
Okay, let's start with gastronomy. It feels like a space where cultural expectations are, maybe the highest, and the social coding is the most subtle.
Oh, absolutely. It's fascinating how quickly this simple act of eating just transforms into this elaborate, almost theatrical social ritual the moment you step into a certain kind of venue.
Totally.
And the sources are right to emphasize this. The advanced diner is not ordering food. You're engaging in a gastronomic experience. And that requires a high degree of cultural literacy that starts long before you even see a menu. #TagJack 1.1, the logistics of the meal.
And that first logistical hurdle is maybe one of the clearest markers of sophistication, getting the reservation. The source material mentions this reality of needing to book weeks in advance for a coveted spot. This isn't just about scheduling, is it? It's about a kind of social currency.
It's absolutely a form of social capital. In any high-demand city, that reservation isn't just an arrangement, it's a statement.
A statement of what?
Well, it proves you have the foresight, maybe the connections, or just the persistence to get access to a desirable experience. Managing that challenge transforms the meal from just a transaction into a planned, anticipated event. And that raises the perceived value for everyone involved.
So that planning phase, knowing when and how to book, is kind of the first layer of the modern dining ritual.
It's the foundational layer.
It also shifts the dynamic, doesn't it? I mean, if you book a table 3 months out, you're committed. The experience suddenly carries a weight that a spontaneous walk-in just doesn't have. You've invested.
And that investment of time creates anticipation, which only enhances the ritualistic aspect of it all.
Yeah.
It signals that the gathering itself is important enough to be scheduled around.
Yeah.
Just think of the difference between, say, grabbing a quick sandwich and attending a carefully curated tasting menu. The psychological investment begins the second you put it in your calendar.
Okay, so we're seated.
Yeah.
Now we get the menu. The source frames this so well. You have to read a menu not as a list of ingredients, but as a culinary narrative.
Yes.
What should you be looking for to decode that narrative?
Well, the skilled reader sees the story the chef is trying to tell.
Yeah.
It's a story about the ingredients, about the terroir, the local environment that shaped the food.
Right.
And the cultural influences. Are the cuts classic French? Or is there a subtle nod to Southeast Asian flavors? You look for specific words. Foraged, heirloom, heritage.
Those aren't just adjectives.
Not at all. They're marketing signals that emphasize rarity, quality, a commitment to certain principles. Decoding this narrative really requires a foundational vocabulary.
Which brings us right to the menu structures. Let's contrast the prefix menu with the, the familiar a la carte selection.
Okay, so a la carte, which means, according to the menu, offers total personalization. You curate your own experience. It maximizes flexibility. It's transactional, customizable.
And prefix feels like the opposite. It feels like a commitment.
It is a deliberate surrender. Prefix is French for fixed price. And this menu is a predetermined sequence of courses, usually 3 to 5 offered at one single inclusive price.
So when you choose it, you're signaling a huge degree of trust in the chef's vision.
Exactly. You're not customizing, you are accepting the narrative as it was written for you.
From the restaurant side, I'm guessing the structure is pretty strategic. It probably allows for a better flow in the kitchen, showcases their best work.
Oh, absolutely. The prefix system lets the kitchen manage labor, control costs, and maintain quality because they're producing these highly controlled, efficient batches.
Right.
For you, the diner, choosing prefix signals that you trust the establishment's judgment. You prioritize a curated experience, and you probably value time efficiency. It's a choice of convenience and deference. Understanding that signals your sophistication.
Okay, so we've got the menu covered, but what about the parts that aren't even written down, the server's recitation of the specials?
The ephemeral dishes, and that word ephemeral is so precise, lasting for a very short time. It elevates the special to something fleeting, something exclusive.
Why do these ephemeral dishes matter so much in the dining ritual?
Well, they serve a few critical functions. First, they showcase the absolute freshest, most seasonal ingredients, often what the chef literally bought that morning. Second, they often act as a testing ground for new concepts from the kitchen. But third, and this is the most important part for you, choosing a special signals that you are engaged with the restaurant's current pulse.
You're in the know.
You are. You're showing that you're a discerning, in-the-moment diner who understands seasonality and appreciates novelty. If you ignore the specials, you're kind of missing out on the most current story the kitchen has to tell.
So if you're trying to demonstrate that C2 social mastery, actively listening to the specials and maybe ordering one, is a nonverbal cue that you're an experienced, appreciative patron. You belong there. Hashtag TagShag 1.2, the ritual of settling the bill.
So transitioning from the pleasure of the meal to the practical reality of the cost, we hit the next social bottleneck, settling the bill.
Yeah.
The sources are right to point out that this is often fraught with awkwardness.
But why is that? I mean, if the total is X, why does paying X become this huge social stress test?
Because the moment the check arrives, all the underlying social dynamics, who's responsible, who's the host, what's the power balance, are suddenly made explicit. The tension isn't really about the money. It's about acknowledging obligation or reciprocity or hierarchy.
Does the host take care of the guest, or is it a purely democratic transaction?
Exactly. And this is where you see those intense cultural differences play out, like the whole discussion of going Dutch.
Yes.
It's the informal term for splitting the bill, either evenly or based on what each person ate. And this model is dominant in Western cultures like the US, Canada, parts of Northern Europe, places where financial independence is highly valued. The goal is a clean, equal transaction.
But I've definitely been in situations where trying to split the bill just feels, I don't know, transactional in a bad way, can kind of cheapen the whole spirit of the outing.
It absolutely can. That's a very perceptive point. The practice comes from, anecdotally anyway, 17th century Dutch traditions of thrift. And while it's practical, forcing a split can violate the spirit of hospitality.
In what context?
Well, in many cultures, especially those centered around family or deep personal ties, the concept of hosting carries immense social weight. When a host insists on treating everyone, it's often tied to honor, generosity, social standing. Trying to split the bill can actually be seen as insulting.
Because it suggests you don't value their gesture.
Or that you feel indebted and you have to repay them immediately.
So the advanced learner needs a really sensitive social radar here. You have to figure out, is this a casual transactional event where going Dutch is the norm, or is this a relationship building thing where you should defer to the host?
Exactly. And the simplest radar check is just to see who reaches for the bill first and how firmly they insist. If they object more than once to your offer to chip in, you have to accept their generosity gracefully. You can find another non-financial way to reciprocate later.
Okay, let's move to the final, and in many places, obligatory financial step. Gratuity. Tipping. The source gives us tremendous weight in North America, calling it an implicit social contract.
And this is a crucial area where social error is so common. In many parts of the world, tipping is genuinely discretionary, right? A bonus for exceptional service.
Right.
In North America, the system is fundamentally different. Because of the wage structures in the service industry, the gratuity is not a bonus. It is considered part of the server's expected compensation.
So failing to tip adequately is, well, it's a failure to uphold that contract.
It is. The expected minimum is 15 to 20% of the pre-tax total. Dipping below 15% is a major faux pas, a significant social error. It borders on hostility.
You're sending a message.
You are.
Yeah.
Either that you're ignorant of the system or you are actively communicating dissatisfaction. The only exception, of course, is if the service was truly abysmal.
Okay, let's define abysmal here because that word has so much weight. How bad does service have to be to justify breaking the contract?
Abysmal means extremely bad, dreadful. It suggests a catastrophic failure, a bottomless pit of unacceptable service. It can't just be slow service or they forgot my water.
So what is it then?
It has to be negligent, rude, or actively detrimental to your experience. We're talking about overt insults, severe delays with zero apology, or, serious health code violations.
I see. So if the service was just slow because the place was understaffed, but the server was polite, leaving a low tip actually reflects poorly on you, the diner, for being punitive.
Precisely. If you are going to violate that social contract, your reason has to be universally understood as extreme. Anything less severe than abysmal, and the inadequate tip is going to reflect negatively on you and your social awareness, not the restaurant. Tipping is a high-level marker of cultural and economic literacy. And now we shift. We go from the logistics of acceptance to the essential logistics of avoidance. This is that social minefield of refusal. The ability to say no gracefully is, I would argue, the single most valuable skill for maintaining long-term sustainability and healthy relationships.
I think it is. It's so easy to say yes to everything, but that path just leads directly to burnout. True mastery is in setting those boundaries gracefully. It protects your energy and your relationships. Hashtag 2.1, why refusal is difficult.
So why is saying no so emotionally hard for people? Especially for people who are, trying to be socially competent.
Well, the difficulty comes from the fact that invitations carry this tremendous implicit weight. When someone invites you, they're offering you validation, inclusion, a shared experience.
A direct, blunt, no, I can't come can feel like you're rejecting them as a person, even if you're only rejecting the event. People fear burning bridges, disappointing others, sounding ungrateful.
So the goal is always to refuse the invitation, but reinforce the person.
Exactly.
And the sources introduce this fantastic piece of vocabulary that immediately elevates your reason beyond the simple, I'm too busy cliche. And that word is bandwidth.
Bandwidth is such a sophisticated, non-emotional way to articulate your limits. It's a term borrowed from engineering, of course, but in a social context, it means your total capacity, not just time, but your cognitive load, your emotional energy, your mental space.
I love that shift because saying I'm busy can feel like a lie, or at least a flimsy excuse. But saying I don't have the bandwidth, that's an objective statement about your current operational capacity.
It is. It implies your internal resources, cognitive, emotional, whatever, are already optimally allocated. Adding one more thing would mean reducing the quality of your existing commitments or just risking personal burnout. It's so effective because it justifies the refusal without criticizing the event. It's detached, professional, and very hard to argue against. Hashtag 2.2, the sandwich method for etiquette.
Okay, so let's assume our bandwidth is at 0. How do we actually deploy the refusal without causing friction? The sources give us this perfect blueprint, the sandwich method for etiquette.
This method is so effective because it plays on a clear psychological truth. People remember the beginning and the end of an interaction most clearly. The refusal gets tucked safely in the middle.
A 3-part structure.
Designed to prioritize the relationship over the transaction.
Let's look at part 1. Start with gratitude, the first slice of bread.
This is so crucial for validation. You have to acknowledge their effort and generosity. Using a phrase like, that sounds lovely, or I'm so honored you thought of me, immediately softens the message.
It signals that you value the gesture.
Right, which ensures the refusal is seen as logistical, not personal. You neutralized the sting of rejection before it even lands.
Then part 2. Insert the refusal with a vague but valid excuse. The filling.
This is where you state the boundary clearly. You have to be definitive. The answer is no for that date.
Yeah.
But you shield the reason using this high-level, nebulous phrasing. You avoid specifics so they can't negotiate with you.
And finally, part 3. Finish with a future possibility. The final slice of bread.
This immediately restores the connection. By saying something like, keep me in the loop, or maybe next time, you're assuring them that the relationship is still intact. The focus shifts from the failed interaction to a hopeful future one.
Okay, let's analyze that sample dialogue again because the structure is just perfect. So John invites Emma.
John says, Emma, a few of us are heading to that new jazz lounge on Saturday night. We'd love for you to join.
And Emma's response is a masterclass. John, that sounds absolutely lovely and I'm flattered you thought of me. That's gratitude. Then, however, I have a prior commitment this Saturday that I simply can't get out of. That's the vague refusal.
And then the close. But please keep me in the loop for next time.
Yeah.
The future possibility.
It's perfect.
And notice that phrase, I simply can't get out of. That elevates the prior commitment from just a choice to a non-negotiable obligation.
Yeah.
It borrows authority from some external force, making the boundary firmer.
Right, and it means Emma doesn't have to reveal that her prior commitment is actually, 2 hours of silence staring at a wall to recharge her bandwidth.
Exactly. It's highly effective.
Okay.
It respects his enthusiasm while firmly protecting her schedule. Hashtag 2.3 essential soft no vocabulary.
We have to pull out 2 specific bits of vocabulary from that dialogue. They are just non-negotiable tools for boundary setting. The first is prior commitment. The source calls this the nebulous phrase.
And its nebulous nature is its greatest strength. It is respectful because it implies you're a busy person who honors your calendar. But crucially, it helps you avoid the trap of jade.
Jade.
Justify, argue, defend, explain.
The jade trap. That's where so many people fail, isn't it? They start over-explaining, and the explanation just sounds trivial.
Exactly. If you say, oh, I can't come because I have to reorganize my sock drawer, you trivialize your need for space, and you invite the other person to offer solutions. Oh, just do that on Sunday.
And now the boundary is gone.
It's porous. You've lost control. Prior commitment, on the other hand, is a fortress. It signals your time is valuable and accounted for, no elaboration needed. It upholds the principle that respecting your own needs is the first step to earning respect from others. It's the epitome of dignified refusal.
Okay, the second indispensable phrase is take a rain check. It feels a little old-fashioned, but it is so effective.
It's timeless because it's so clear. It originated in 19th century baseball, actually. If a game was rained out, fans were given a voucher, a literal rain check to attend a future game. It was contractual promise to reschedule.
So in a social context, how does that history translate linguistically?
It shifts the entire dynamic from rejection to postponement. You are leveraging the linguistic power of a promise. You're not saying, no, I never want to do this. You're saying, not now, but I value you and the activity enough that I genuinely want to reschedule.
So that implied promise of future engagement softens the blow.
It softens the blow and it manages their expectations far better than a simple maybe next time.
So the 1-2 punch is mastery. Use prior commitment for a firm reason now, and then use take a rain check to reassure them that the relationship is still a priority.
That structure is robust. It's the ultimate tool for managing your social calendar sustainably.
All right, and we move to the final pillar. Let's say we navigated the invitation, we accepted, we went to the event. Now comes the part where we're socially required to discuss it. This is where the advanced learner moves beyond just being a participant and becomes an analyst.
That's right. The goal is not to express whether something was good or bad. That's a binary judgment that tells us very little. The goal is to articulate why and how the experience succeeded or failed on specific, measurable criteria. We have to deal in nuance. Hashtag tag 3.1. Moving beyond binary descriptions.
Why is avoiding those binary judgments so important for a sophisticated critique? I mean, in the age of Yelp and 5-star ratings, simplicity seems to be king.
Simplicity rules the lowest common denominator. But complex experiences are almost never uniformly excellent or uniformly terrible.
That's true.
A restaurant might have flawless food, but unbearably loud music. A movie might have incredible cinematography, but a really weak script. A sophisticated critique acknowledges that complexity. It shows you engaged critically, you were present, you noticed things, you thought about the component parts.
And the social requirement of the post-event critique. It suggests that the discussion after the event is almost as important as the event itself.
In many ways, it is. It's the moment where we process and assign value to that shared experience. If you can't articulate why you enjoyed or disliked something, your opinion just doesn't carry any weight. You contribute nothing meaningful to the group's processing of it.
It's like intellectual reciprocity.
That's a great way to put it. You consume the experience, and then you contribute an informed perspective.
That makes so much sense. If someone asks me what I thought of a film and I just say, it was great, that's the end of the conversation.
Right.
But if I say, the lead performance was electrifying, but the pacing in the second act felt a little uneven, that invites discussion. It shows I was actually engaged.
Exactly. It shows you paid attention to the execution, not just the emotion. Hashtag tag tag 3.2, analytical vocabulary for balanced opinion. So the primary strategy here is to separate the components. You analyze the experience by breaking it down into distinct, often contrasting elements. This forces a balanced perspective.
Okay, let's look at the nuanced language for critiquing creative works, film, books, art. The sources offer a great template. Visually, it was stunning, but the plot was a bit derivative.
Okay, so the praise for the execution's stunning visuals is immediate and genuine. But then the critique lands on the content, a derivative plot. And that term, derivative, is highly analytical. It means lacking originality, copied from or owing its existence to something that came before.
So if I say a plot is derivative, I'm not saying the story is bad. I'm saying it failed to meet the critical expectation of innovation. It just followed predictable tropes or borrowed too heavily from other things.
Precisely. It signals that you're familiar with the broader genre and that this particular entry didn't really move the needle. This is a much higher level of analysis than just saying the story was boring. It connects your opinion to critical standards.
Could I also use a word like pedestrian here? If the film was just okay but not innovative?
Oh, pedestrian is an excellent C2 term for that. It means dull, ordinary, unimaginative. It suggests the work just walk a very common path. It's a subtle but effective way of saying something lacked flair without being overtly negative.
Okay, now let's apply that contrast strategy to a restaurant. The example given is, the ambiance was impeccable, but the service was a bit lackluster.
Right, so impeccable means faultless. You're giving high, clear praise to the atmosphere, the decor, the mood, but then you contrast it with lackluster service.
And lackluster, as a polite descriptor, is perfect. It means it was lacking energy, spirit, or shine.
It is diplomacy in action. If you say the service was terrible, it sounds aggressive, often personal. But if you say it was lackluster, you're commenting on a deficiency in energy or enthusiasm, maybe a lack of polish.
You're diagnosing a problem in the delivery system.
Exactly. Without condemning the individual server, you're maintaining the critical distance needed for a nuanced critique. That demonstrates maturity.
Yeah, that language keeps the whole conversation analytical instead of emotional. It shows you notice the slow speed, but you're not going to condemn the whole place because the impeccable atmosphere saved it. Hashtag tag tag 3.3, the ultimate diplomatic critique.
And this leads us to the final and maybe the most crucial piece of vocabulary for social diplomacy. If your goal is to set a personal boundary on taste without offending the thing itself or the person who loves it,
Yes.
the ultimate diplomatic phrase is, "It wasn't my cup of tea."
Why is that phrase the pinnacle of diplomacy? It sounds so simple.
Because it achieves one essential social function.
Yeah.
It entirely removes objective fault from the subject and places the dislike entirely on subjective preference.
It's a masterful linguistic deflection.
It is. You're saying the problem is with my subjective preference for coffee, not with the objective quality of this tea.
Right.
So imagine a friend recommends a band they love, say heavy metal music. If you just say that music is terrible, you are making an objective claim that challenges your friend's taste and, the whole genre. You're inviting a fight. But if you say, I can absolutely see why people enjoy the complexity and intensity of heavy metal, but it's just not my cup of tea, what have you done?
You've validated their enjoyment while still asserting your own preference. It's the ultimate de-escalator.
It transforms the conversation from a judgment of quality, is this good or bad, into an observation about personal compatibility. Is this for me? And that shift in framing is the highest form of social tact. It closes the conversation diplomatically. No further defense needed. It is the social equivalent of a mic drop, but, polite.
Yeah.
Hashtag outro.
That was an incredibly dense and frankly very necessary deep dive into the often unspoken rules of advanced social maneuvering. Let's do a really quick recap of the key takeaways and vocabulary we pulled. Just make sure these points stick with you.
Okay, first, in the realm of dining, remember that mastery starts with logistics. Understand the curated structure of a prefix experience versus a la carte. Recognize ephemeral dishes as those fleeting seasonal opportunities.
Right.
And internalize the cultural weight of gratuity in North America. It's a contract. And failing to meet that 15-20% standard without truly abysmal service is a serious faux pas.
Second, regarding the art of refusal, your goal is to manage your boundaries and your relationships at the same time. Use the term bandwidth to justify your refusal professionally. Deploy that three-part sandwich method using the nebulous phrase prior commitment to set a firm boundary. And always offer to take a rain check to signal you're still interested in the relationship.
And third, in the sphere of critique, move beyond good and bad. Embrace complexity by separating components. Use analytical vocabulary, lackluster for weak delivery, derivative for unoriginal creative work.
And when all else fails.
Use the ultimate diplomatic shield. It wasn't my cup of tea.
So what does this all mean for you, the learner? Well, understanding and actually implementing these sophisticated skills is what bridges that gap between basic fluency and true social mastery. It empowers you to navigate these complex waters with confidence.
It really does. Mastery isn't just knowing the rules, it's understanding the psychology behind the rules, how they manage expectations, convey respect, and articulate complex thoughts diplomatically. That confidence transforms how you participate in the public sphere.
We'll leave you with a final provocative thought to chew on. We spent a lot of time talking about how to articulate dissatisfaction diplomatically. Now, consider the inverse challenge. If the ultimate diplomatic critique for something you dislike is to say it wasn't your cup of tea, how would you apply that same nuanced, component-based method to something you genuinely loved?
Don't just settle for, the movie was amazing. What are the specific analytical compliments you can give? Instead of just saying the food was great, could you articulate the narrative structure of the 4 courses was surprisingly inventive, and the balance of texture and heat in the main course was meticulous?
But the initial cocktail selection felt a bit conventional. Even in praise, you can find nuance.
No.
The goal is always specificity. Keep refining your palate, and most importantly, keep refining your vocabulary. Until next time, keep diving deep. Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're going to do something a little different. We are intentionally stepping away from our usual diet of, macroeconomics, geopolitical shifts, that kind of thing.
Right.
Instead, we're taking all of that analytical rigor we usually save for those topics, and we're pointing it inward. We're focusing it entirely on the structure of our downtime.
Which is a subject that I think deserves that same level of seriousness.
It really does. We're stepping into the home, into the domestic sphere to explore the architecture of hosting, the dynamics of what real rest looks like, and maybe the biggest question of all, who are we when we aren't working?
And that really is the perfect place to start, by treating our leisure time with the same intention that we apply to our professional lives.
Exactly.
Because for so many of us, the weekend is more than just time off. It's become, in a way, the guardian of our identity. It's this finite, precious block of time we have for, yes, recovery, but also for self-discovery.
And the contrast there is so important to establish right at the top. During the week, our time, well, it isn't really ours, is it? It belongs to employers, to clients. It's dictated by calendars and deadlines.
It's heteronymous, as you said in the notes.
Right. But the weekend, that's the domain of autonomy. That time belongs to you. And how you use that time, how intentionally you use it, can really define the quality of your entire life.
So that's our mission for this deep dive. We're going to analyze the mechanics of using that time well. We've pulled together some fascinating sources that look at everything from the sociology of a dinner party to the psychology of, climbing a mountain for fun.
Treating it not as a footnote to the work week, but as the vital architecture for a balanced self.
Couldn't have said it better.
Okay, so let's lay out a roadmap for everyone listening. We've broken this down into 3 main territories we're going to explore. First, we're starting in the home. We'll be looking at the real effort and the surprising vulnerability that's required in hosting.
Then from there, we'll get into the core dichotomy of rest itself, this idea of the active versus the restorative archetypes of leisure. And we'll really dig into the paradox of so-called type 2 fun.
Which is a concept I love. Why getting exhausted can be the most relaxing thing you do all week.
Exactly.
And finally, we're going to tackle the big one, the really existential challenge of extricating your identity from your job. How do we stop defining ourselves by what we do for a living?
It's about setting boundaries and why protecting that time is, when you get down to it, an act of self-respect.
So let's begin where all of this connection starts, right at the front door. Let's talk about the architecture of hosting. So when we talk about hosting, I think we have to start by asking why it feels so different from just meeting up at a pub or a coffee shop. What is it about inviting people into your home that carries so much more weight?
I think the key word is vulnerability. That's the immediate tax a host pays. When you meet in a public space, the environment is neutral. It's controlled.
And the mess isn't your problem.
The mess is definitely not your problem. But when you host at home, you're performing a really personal disclosure. You're laying everything bare, your organizational skills or lack thereof.
Your taste in books on the shelf.
Your aesthetic choices,
Yeah.
maybe even your financial situation, it's all just there. You're showing people the messy drafting room of your life, not the polished final product.
That is a great way to put it. And I think people really underestimate the sheer effort involved. We tend to frame it as, oh, I'm just having a few people over for snacks. But the sources we looked at define the role as something much, much bigger. You're not just a provider, you are curating an experience.
Curating, that's the word. It's the absolute perfect verb because it shifts the whole frame from a simple transaction to a deliberate, thoughtful act.
So what does that curation actually entail?
Well, it's about managing the flow of everything. The conversation, the physical comfort of your guests, the overall mood of the entire evening. It becomes a form of psychological labor, really. You are actively managing the collective emotional state in the room.
Which brings us to a concept from the research that I found fascinating. The idea of the host as a facilitator of social cross-pollination.
Yes, this is so crucial. You're not just putting people in a room together and hoping for the best.
Right. You're not just the zookeeper.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You have to be an engineer of interaction. Imagine you have a mix of guests who don't know each other, maybe some work colleagues, some old university friends. They exist in totally separate orbits. The host is the only one who can bridge those worlds.
You're the bridge.
You're the bridge. And if you fail at that, the night can splinter. You end up with these little awkward, isolated groups, and the whole point of the gathering is lost.
There was this metaphor in one of the sources that I just loved, the host as the conductor of the orchestra. You might not be playing an instrument yourself, but you're setting the tempo, you're making sure everyone is in harmony.
It's perfect. Because a conductor has to know when to bring in the strings, when to quiet the brass.
Yeah.
You're constantly adjusting. Let's say you have a software engineer and a poet in the same room.
Yeah.
How do you get them past the so what do you do stage?
Which is often a dead end.
A total dead end. And this is where a very specific, very practical technique comes in. The sources were unanimous on this.
Yeah.
You have to introduce people not just by name, but by interest or context.
Okay, let's break that down because it sounds like such a small thing, but the impact is huge. Why is that so much better than the standard, John, this is Sarah?
Because John, meet Sarah, puts all the pressure, all the cognitive load on them. They have to do all the work of finding common ground, which is, well, it's stressful for a lot of people. It leads to those generic, boring questions.
So how do you know the host?
It's the classic. And then silence. But if you, as the host, provide a conversational tether, you change the entire dynamic. So instead of just names, you say, John, I want you to meet Sarah. Sarah was just telling me about her trip to Japan, and I know you've been planning a trip there yourself.
Ah, so you've just handed them a topic on the silver platter. You've done the work for them.
You've done the hardest part of the work for them. You are, as the source material so nicely put it, lubricating the social gears. You're getting them turning smoothly right from the start.
And once those gears are turning, you need the right environment to keep them going. This is where we get into the idea of ambiance.
The silent co-conspirator. The mood of the room is doing half your work for you if you get it right.
We talk about things like mood lighting all the time, but the sources we read treated it almost like a science. Let's unpack the key components. What's the first one?
Lighting. It's always lighting. It is the absolute foundation of psychological comfort. Think about where you find harsh, bright overhead lights.
Offices, hospitals, supermarkets.
Exactly. Places of labor, places of stress. They are designed to keep you alert and on task. That is the opposite of what you want for a relaxed social gathering.
So what's the alternative?
You need soft, warm light. Diffused light from multiple sources at different heights. So lamps, candles, maybe a dimmer switch on the main light. Warm light triggers a neurological response. It signals safety, intimacy. It literally encourages people to lower their psychological defenses.
You can't really be vulnerable under a spotlight.
You really can't. And then there's the auditory landscape, the background music. This is a real tightrope walk.
Yeah, you can get this so wrong. Too loud, too quiet, wrong genre.
The golden rule is simple, but so important. The music cannot compete with the human voice. Its job is not to be the main event. Its job is to be texture.
What do you mean by texture?
It's there to fill the natural lulls in conversation, to prevent that awkward, deafening silence that can sometimes fall over a room and make people feel, pressured. But the moment your guests have to raise their voices to be heard, or they stop talking to ask, ooh, what's this song? You failed.
So it's got to be a supportive background player, not the star of the show.
Precisely. Think instrumental jazz, some kinds of classical, or even those low-key ambient electronic playlists, something that adds warmth without demanding any cognitive energy.
Right. And what's the third piece of the ambiance puzzle?
This one sounds so basic, but it's amazing how many people forget it. It's just keeping everyone hydrated.
Yeah.
Constantly and proactively offering a drink, whether that's water, another glass of wine, or a cup of tea later on.
Why is that so significant?
Because it's a nonverbal, continuous signal of care. It says, I am paying attention to your needs. I am here to make you comfortable. It's a small, repeated action that builds a huge amount of trust and goodwill over the course of an evening.
Okay, so we've covered the host side of the equation. It's a huge amount of effort, vulnerability, and skill. But this is a two-way street. The social contract has two signatures. We have to talk about the guest's role and the core principle of reciprocity.
Yes, reciprocity is everything, because it's the guest's way of acknowledging the asymmetrical effort involved in hosting.
Asymmetrical effort, I like that.
Yeah.
The host has invested their home, their time, their money, their emotional labor.
All of it, to create this environment for you. If the guest doesn't recognize that and respond in kind, the whole social contract feels violated.
And the most common way to materialize that recognition is the host gift. It's not about spending a lot of money, is it? It's the gesture itself.
It's entirely the gesture. The gift, the bottle of wine, some nice chocolates, bouquet of flowers. It's a tangible symbol. It's a physical object that communicates a message.
And that message is?
The message is, I see the effort you made. I see the vulnerability you offered. And I value it. It balances the scales.
So what happens if someone shows up empty-handed? Even if they don't mean anything by it, what's the unconscious signal they're sending?
The signal, whether intended or not, is, I take your labor for granted. And that can create this tiny, quiet psychological penalty for the host. They might feel a little bit used or undervalued. The gift prevents that. It reinforces the bond by making sure the transaction feels fair and respected on both sides.
It really moves the idea of a host gift from being some quaint, old-fashioned formality to a crucial piece of social technology.
That's a great way to think about it. It's functional. It's a tool for maintaining healthy social bonds.
So to wrap up this first segment, hosting isn't just having people over. It's a deliberate act of curation.
It's an act of curation, and the guest's job is to recognize that curation with an act of reciprocity. When that happens, you create the foundation for real human connection.
Okay, that idea of intentional connection is the perfect bridge to our second segment. We're moving from how we spend time with others to how we spend our truly autonomous time, the time for ourselves. And the sources lay out these two fundamental archetypes, these two different paths to renewal, the active and the restorative.
And it's so important to understand that these aren't just, personal preferences. They often represent deep psychological needs that are driven by the specific kind of fatigue you've built up during the work week.
Let's start with the active weekend. This is the world of the adrenaline seekers, the hikers, the marathon runners, the people whose idea of relaxation is paradoxically pure exertion.
It does seem completely counterintuitive, doesn't it? You work hard all week, you're tired, so you spend your precious weekend making yourself even more tired.
So why does it work? Why is getting physically exhausted so restorative for some people?
I think the answer lies in the type of stress you're substituting. Most modern work involves abstract cognitive stress. You're wrestling with a spreadsheet, you're navigating office politics, you're sitting in endless meetings, your brain is fried.
So the body has to take over.
The body has to take over the process of catharsis. And to really get this, we have to talk about this brilliant concept called type 2 fun.
Yes. Let's define this properly because it's such a useful framework.
Okay, so type 2 fun is any activity that is, to be blunt, pretty miserable while it's happening.
Chuckles.
It involves discomfort, pain, maybe a little bit of fear. And this is the crucial part. It becomes incredibly rewarding and enjoyable in retrospect.
So you're halfway up a mountain in the pouring rain, your legs are burning, you're hungry. That is type 2 fun in the moment.
That is the peak of type 2 fun. The misery is very, very real. But when you get back to the car or you're sitting by the fire later that day, clean and warm, the psychological payoff is enormous.
And what's happening psychologically to create that payoff?
Two things, primarily. First, it gives you a massive, undeniable sense of agency and accomplishment. So much of our work is, it's intangible. You send emails, you move things around on a slide deck. The results can feel disconnected from reality.
Climbing a mountain is not abstract.
It is the opposite of abstract. It is a simple, verifiable victory. You started at the bottom, you overcame real physical obstacles, and now you're at the top. It's a very primal reward loop.
And the second thing?
The second thing is the mental release. When you're engaged in something physically demanding and a little bit risky, your brain is forced to stop worrying about that Q3 budget report. It has to focus entirely on the here and now. Where do we put my foot next? Is that rock stable? It's a forced mindfulness. It flushes out all the accumulated cognitive sludge from the week.
It's a hard reset for the brain.
A very hard reset, but I have to bring up a counterpoint here, kind of play devil's advocate for a second.
Please do.
In a world that is already so obsessed with metrics and performance, isn't there a danger that type 2 fun just becomes another job? We start tracking our hike times on Strava, comparing our stats. Are we just optimizing our own exhaustion?
That's a fantastic question. We're turning rest into another form of competitive labor.
And that's a real risk. The sources are pretty clear that the crucial difference is intention. If your goal is external validation to get the best time to post about it on social media, then yes, it's just more work. It's stressful.
But if the intention is internal?
If the intention is internal, to clear your head, to challenge yourself, to feel that sense of agency, then it remains genuinely restorative. The other key is elision. You chose this struggle. You can stop whenever you want. That's a world away from the mandatory struggles of your job.
That's a really helpful distinction, the internal locus of control. Okay, so now let's flip the coin completely. Let's move from the adrenaline junkies to the champions of stillness, the restorative weekend.
This is the domain of the sedentary, but in the best possible way. The goal here is pure mental decompression.
Who is this for?
This is the essential medicine for people whose wents are filled with intense cognitive load. Think lawyers, doctors, programmers, teachers. People who spend all day in their heads solving complex problems or dealing with high-stakes social interactions.
For them, another layer of exertion would just be more fatigue.
It would be piling physical exhaustion on top of mental exhaustion.
Yeah.
What they need is the opposite. They need stillness.
And what do the activities look like here? We're talking about reading, taking long baths.
Cooking something that takes hours. Or my personal favorite from the research, the wonderfully British concept of pottering around.
Let's define pottering because it's such a perfect word. It's not just doing nothing, is it?
No, it's not. It's the act of doing a series of small, aimless but pleasant tasks that have no deadline, no urgency, and absolutely no performance metric attached to them.
So you might water the plants or rearrange a bookshelf or maybe just wipe down a counter that didn't really need it.
Exactly. And the magic is in the aimlessness. Our work lives are governed by the tyranny of efficiency. Every minute is supposed to be productive, every action optimized. Pottering is a rebellion against that. It's profoundly anti-optimization.
That feels so necessary. But I want to draw another distinction here. How is pottering different from just procrastinating? They can look very similar from the outside.
Ah, that is a brilliant point. The difference is the internal state. Procrastination is when you're avoiding a high-stakes task, and you feel the stress and guilt of that avoidance the entire time. It's stressful non-action.
Right. The thing you're supposed to be doing is looming over you.
It's looming. But pottering is the absence of that pressure. You're doing something low-stakes and pleasant precisely because there's nothing else you should be doing. It is stress-free displacement.
So the goal of this restorative weekend isn't to achieve a specific outcome, like climbing a mountain. It's to achieve a specific state of being.
Exactly. The goal is to let your mind defragment, to let it process all the background noise from the week without any pressure to produce an output. If the active weekend offers catharsis through a physical purge, the restorative weekend offers catharsis through psychological withdrawal.
And for some of the most productive people out there, the most genuinely productive thing they can do for their long-term health is absolutely nothing.
Absolutely nothing with a goal attached to it anyway. It's an investment in their future mental bandwidth.
So the real takeaway for you, the listener, is to first diagnose your fatigue. Is your brain buzzing with noise and needs silence? Or is your body stiff from sitting still and needs movement?
And once you know that, you can choose your form of leisure with real intention. And that intention is what turns simple downtime into powerful restoration.
And that idea of intention, of choosing how you spend your time, that leads us directly into our third and final segment, which is, I think, the most profound part of this whole discussion. The weekend isn't just about rest. It's the primary arena where we have to actively reclaim our own identities.
And we have to start by acknowledging the core problem in our culture, which is this deep, deep conflation of identity and labor.
Who you are has become the same as what you do.
It's the great existential risk of modern life. We're taught, almost from birth, that our value as a person, our social worth, our place in the hierarchy is directly tied to our economic function. And we internalize that message so deeply.
And you see it everywhere. It's the default script in our social interactions. You meet someone new at a party, you shake hands, and what's the first real question that almost always gets asked?
So what do?
Every single time.
It's the universal shortcut to sizing someone up. It's basically code for tell me how the market values you so I know how to value you.
And when you build your entire sense of self on that foundation, well, it's incredibly unstable, isn't it? Because markets change, jobs get eliminated, you retire, and then what? If your job title is your identity, what happens when that title is stripped away?
You're left with a void, a profound identity crisis. And this is why the weekend is so structurally important. It's the scheduled time we have to access and actively nurture what the sources call the multifaceted self.
The idea that we aren't just one thing, we're not just economic units.
We're these complex, layered beings with interests and passions and roles that have nothing to do with earning a paycheck.
Let's use the examples from the research because they make this so clear. You might be, say, an accountant during the week. Your entire professional life is about numbers, logic, spreadsheets. That's your economic function.
But on Saturday morning, that same person becomes a gardener, totally absorbed in the soil and the seasons. Or they're a guitarist in a band, lost in creativity. Or they're a volunteer at an animal shelter.
None of which have any direct economic utility.
Zero. But they are absolutely critical facets of who that person is. The weekend is the time we have to let those other facets breathe. It's when we perform the crucial act of extricating our sense of self from our economic function.
That's a great word, extricating. It sounds like a difficult, active process.
I think it is. It's a conscious decoupling of your self-worth from your market worth. The accountant only exists from 9 to 5. The gardener, the musician, the volunteer. They exist for pure fulfillment. And recognizing that those identities have inherent value is a revolutionary act in our culture.
This connects right back to what we said at the beginning about autonomy. The weekend is the time that is yours. And protecting that time, setting boundaries around it. The sources argue this is more than just good work-life balance. It's a fundamental act of self-respect.
It's self-defense. It really is. If you allow your work to bleed into your weekend, you're not just giving up free time. You are allowing your economic function to colonize the space that's meant for the rest of your identity.
So protecting your Sunday morning from that urgent email isn't just about avoiding work.
No, it's about saying that the gardener or the parent or the friend in you is just as important, or maybe more important, than the accountant in you. You're defending the territory of the multifaceted self.
And what's the real psychological cost when those boundaries are weak, when they're porous?
The cost is that you never truly rest. Your brain stays in this low-grade state of alert, always waiting for the digital leash to pull you back to work. You never fully enter that restorative state. So you show up on Monday not just tired, but with a diminished sense of who you are outside of your job.
So setting a firm boundary like turning off notifications or committing to an activity that can't be interrupted is a declaration. You're declaring that your identity is worthy of protection.
Exactly. And that brings us to the final unifying principle of this whole deep dive. The idea of intentional leisure. It doesn't matter if you're hosting a party, climbing a mountain, or just pottering in the garden. The key is that it must be done with intention and volition.
It has to be a conscious choice.
A conscious choice. Intention is the filter that separates active self-care from just passive downtime. It's the difference between choosing to read a book for 2 hours and accidentally losing 2 hours to mindless scrolling on your phone.
One leaves you feeling restored, the other often leaves you feeling empty and a bit anxious.
Precisely. If you choose the active path, your intention is catharsis. If you choose the restorative path, your intention is decompression. If you choose to host, your intention is connection. But without that intention, the weekend just sort of evaporates. It becomes this blurry, unsatisfying time that doesn't really recharge you.
So intentional leisure is how we ensure that the time we own is actually spent building and reinforcing the self we want to be.
It ensures the guardian of our identity is strong, well-fed, and ready to defend its territory. Hashtag tag outro.
Okay, that was a lot to unpack. Let's try to distill this down to a few key takeaways. For anyone listening who wants to start moving from just passive recovery to truly intentional leisure, what's the essential advice?
I think we can boil it down to 3 core pillars, one from each segment we discussed.
Okay, pillar number 1, host with intent. If you're going to invite people into your home, embrace the role of the curator. Don't just provide space. Engineer the ambiance, Practice that social cross-pollination with your introductions.
And for the guests, remember the principle of reciprocity. That small gift is a powerful symbol that you recognize and value the labor of being hosted.
Right. Pillar 2, define your leisure. Stop thinking of rest as just one thing. You have to diagnose your own fatigue first. Do you need the catharsis of exertion and type 2 fun?
Or do you need the deep decompression that comes from the aimless, stress-free joy of pottering around? Both are incredibly valid forms of catharsis, but you have to match the medicine to the ailment.
And finally, pillar 3, which is the big one, reclaim your identity. You have to actively, deliberately use your downtime to nurture your multifaceted self.
Practice extricating your self-worth from your job title. And please, internalize this. Protecting your time, setting those firm boundaries is not selfish. It is a necessary, profound act of self-respect.
So this whole deep dive, it wasn't just about sharing some interesting ideas. It was about offering a new lens, a new framework for how you think about and spend the only time that is truly yours.
It's about moving from passively enduring the weekend to actively designing it. And that design is what creates genuine rest and resilience.
So as we wrap up, we want to leave you with one final thought to explore on your own, a question that builds on this whole theme of identity.
The question is this: if you were to strip away your job title, your company, your entire professional persona, what's left? What is your alter ego on the weekend?
Are you a baker? A hiker, a painter, a gamer?
A mentor. Who is the person that emerges when no one is paying you, when there are no performance reviews? Identify that person, that passionate, autonomous self that doesn't need any external validation.
Because that's the part of you that will sustain you, the time and the space it needs to thrive.
Because that's the part of you that will sustain you long after the work is done.
Thank you for joining us for this deep dive.
We'll talk to you next time. Have a wonderful and, above all, intentional weekend.